In the 20th century in the United States, each succeeding generation embraced its own musical forms, which were either danced to or listened to for entertainment. At the turn of the century, it was ragtime. Then, in the post-World War I period, the country entered the jazz age. The Charleston was born and lived through the Roaring '20s. The country then looked for a new beat and found it in the music of the big bands, Duke Ellington, Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller, and of course, the king of swing, Benny Goodman. The big band era was a positive and optimistic music and an inspiration to millions during one of the more difficult periods of American history, the Great Depression, World War II, and the post-war recession. In contrast to smaller jazz combos, in which most of the music is improvised or created spontaneously, music played by big bands is highly arranged, or prepared in advance and notated on sheet music. The music is traditionally called charts. Improvised solos may be played only when called for by the arranger. Before World War II in Leominster, Thad Bell, son of the mayor of Leominster, formed a band with friends from school. They played at local events, and a lot of people who played in that band went on to become professional musicians. This was to be the first local Leominster big band. The band under the name of Thad Bell was active mainly in 1939 and 1940. Emilio Di Giovanni, known by most people as Frankie D, started playing saxophone as a young boy. He, along with his boyhood friend Al Pimarini, over the years would create a musical partnership that lasted a lifetime. Before World War II, he organized a big band of young musicians, mainly from the Leominster Fitchburg area.
Looking back, it was probably in the 1938, 1939. Well, it was an exciting experience because up till that time I wasn't playing with a big band, and I was filling in with smaller groups. So when that opportunity came and I knew the boys, I decided to join them on their gigs, and I enjoyed it so much that whenever they had one, I made sure I made it.
I think it was just before the Second World War. They were still in high school, and a small group got together. He played with a number of bands prior, as a kid, and Dennis Cormier's dad, Larry, was part of the initial band. He played guitar and sang. And slowly my Uncle Gino came into the band, and then my cousin Vincent Tiberio came in, Willie Rodderquins. Initially, prior to the war, and then the band broke up during the war.
Oh, when I was a kid, I used to follow them all the time. They used to rehearse in the old Forger Hall building, and we would look through the windows, and it was a thrill. And there were a couple of times when one of the lead trumpet players didn't have a trumpet, so they would come over to my house and borrow the trumpet.
And the Frankie D band kind of ended in 1942 when Frank went into the service and ended up down in Charleston. I'm not sure if it's South Carolina or North Carolina, and he was in the Coast Guard. And he ended up in a band there and spent the rest, most of his time right there in that band in Charleston. When that band folded, I ended up fronting a band and started a band. A lot of the guys that played in the Frankie D band wanted to continue playing, so we started a band and we called it the Gene Carlson Band. Of course, in those days, if you had a a tough name like Gene Koresha, which was considered tough in those days, you try to get a name that had a nice rhyme to it and that was easy to remember. So we came up with Gene Carlson. And some of the same players that played in the Frankie D band ended up with the Gene Carlson band.
Like other businesses and services, World War II put a hold on many of the plans and dreams of the area musicians. After a year of leading the Gene Carlson band, Gene also entered into the service of our country.
After World War II, I remember the first rehearsal. We called the first rehearsal. All the guys were back, and the rehearsal was at Eagles Hall in Leominster. So we brought all the musicians up there, and when that band played, it brought back terrific memories before the war, and also the band sounded great because the guys were a little bit older, a lot more experienced, a lot of them a lot more, because while they were away, they were playing. A lot of them got into bands in the Army, and they were playing.
Oh, yeah. I was a teenager, I think maybe junior high school, and everything. We used to go watch the band rehearse. They used to rehearse at the old DGS furniture store. I believe Frankie D. Digi owned it at the time. And they used to rehearse, I think, every Monday night. So we used to go over there, and they had the big open doors, and we'd sit there, and we'd watch the band, and just like, wow, you know, they had, at that time, they had a great band. They had a lot of Kenton arrangements and Count Basie arrangements. They were really swinging. And I used to sit there, and I'd look at Billy Marama, excellent, excellent drummer. And I'd look at him, and I'd say, one of these days, I'd say to myself, I'm going to be up there.
The Frankie D band bought a lot of the music they played. Some of the guys in the band would write charts, but most of the Frankie D arrangements were created by a guy from Fitchburg.
Yeah, I did some. We had a friend of mine by the name of Dick Fennell who did a lot of writing. Dick died at a very young age. He had a lot more energy than I did. He really worked at it. He was really into it. We got him started. I got him to go to school with us in Boston. And we went to what used to be the Schillinger House. It's now the Berklee College of Music. And a whole bunch of us used to go down there. But he did a lot of writing for the Frankie D band.
The Frankie D band in the mid-1950s recorded a couple of songs at Ace Recording Studios in Boston.
Larry was in the box off stage with earmuffs on, listening to the orchestration. And it was cut up. This is the early days when there was 4 miles of wiring on the floor and overhead mics and whatever. The place was just packed. A small room with a lot of junk and 16 musicians. And I think they came out okay.
I was very critical of them myself personally about the way what they were doing. I'm saying, what are these guys? What are they kidding? But they're supposed to be the experts. But I found out a lot of them are not. Because they're not tuned in musically to know what to listen for.
So I was never able to really watch the band playing live at any functions because I was, too young. But that was my first recollection of the large orchestra, of the Frankie D Orchestra, from listening to that recording that we had hanging around the house.
All of me, why not take all of me? Can't you see I'm no good without you? Take my arms, I wanna lose them, baby. Take my lips, baby, I'll never use them. Your goodbye left me with eyes that cry. How can I get on here without you? You took the part, baby, that once was my heart. So why not take all of me?
Some of the songs on one of them we put on record was the one I wrote about All of Me, with the background, the vocal background. That was one we put on a record. To go to Bridgeport, Connecticut to play a dance on Sunday night. Bridgeport, now that's quite a ways from here. We used to drive down in the cars. We're all hip about big bands. We'd go to Australia to play a gig. We went down there, we'd get home about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. Everybody's got to go back to work that morning. So we'd go in blurry-eyed, but we went to work. Nobody ever lost a job. But they made sure they played the gig.
Sing this beautiful song, here is Don Cornell.
It isn't fair for you to taunt me.
The most memorable night or weekend that I can remember them having was to play 3 gigs Woonsocket, Rhode Island, Providence, and someplace in was like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday thing with Don Cornell. And if you remember, Don Cornell, big, tall guy, good-looking guy, really belted out a number of hits. And I saw him live a few years ago, just a couple of years before he passed away in Sarasota. I went to the show, and you'd remember most of his tunes. Probably not his name, but his tunes and his voice. And I had a chance to talk to him, and I asked him if he remembered the band. He said, yeah. He remembered the places where the gigs were held, and I felt real good about that. You know, that this guy of his stature remembered this band many years ago. Wow.
You gave me just a taste of high life. If this is love, then I repeat.
And from then on, we played till the 50s. And when the big band scene started to fade away, there were no gigs. You know, the gigs were few and far between.
Frank preferred to play locally with Allie and Billy Maramet, and they just enjoyed it. They cut out these long distance traveling, and they started playing, you know, regular general business and weddings and what have you.
The Frankie D Orchestra had long since, the big band had long since disbanded, but Frankie D and my father would still take an occasional gig playing weddings with a small combo and doing just general business type of gigs. So they would need a bass player from time to time. They used different people, and my father had asked me if I wanted to try playing with the small group. I was able to fill in on quite a few of these small group gigs with Frankie D and my father. And that was very exciting because Frankie D was a character. He really was. Fantastic rapport with the audience, a great band leader. It was pretty amazing that they could just play just about anything that the audience requested at the drop of a hat.
Once Frank left, I left, and a few other musicians left, and what developed was the Dick Williams Band. He used to be the announcer, I believe, in Fitchburg, and he took over the band for several years, and it was called the Dick Williams Band. And they had the library. Frank gave them the library, and then they disbanded after several years, and no other band existed until we started Group 70.
The Frankie D book of arrangements were passed on to another fabulous Leominster Fitchburg big band.
Actually, Joey Fraticelli was responsible. He's the one that started it. We went, this was in 1970 actually, because that's where we got the name, but anyway, we went to a concert. We went to see Buddy Rich at the Civic Center, and Ricky Stepton was playing with him at the time. So we all went, and right after the thing, I mean, it was a great show and everything, and right after that, Joey comes up to me, he says, "That's it." I said, "What?" He goes, "Let's start a band." I goes, "What do you mean start a band? When are we going to start a band?" He goes, who are we going to start a band with? He goes, "I got the guys." He goes, "Look, we got guys." He goes, me and my brother and my cousin, Rolly Fraticelli, and you got your brother that plays bass, and Jeanette Ciccolini. Well, it was Jeanette Gerard at the time before she got married. It was the vocalist, Phil Valera, Charlie Johns, Wayne North, Mitch Epstein, Frank Barber. So I said, "Yeah, all right, let's do it." So we got together, we got some of those old arrangements. He wrote a few. We started rehearsing at his house, and we played our first gig at the Il Camino. 1970, in the green room. They got the green room. We played our first gig there. And after that, it was just, the band went from there till, I don't know, mid-90s, I think they finally.
It was a really heady time, lots of fun, lots of laughs. We had a lot of things happen with this band, and we still tell stories about it. But mostly it was, I think, the audiences. The audiences were awesome. Everybody danced at that time. So wherever we went, and there used to be beautiful, fabulous dances, and people would be dancing all night long, right up until 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was always such a thrill to be able to sing to that group.
This is, I think, their first audience.
Start spreading the news. Yeah, I'm not even sure how New York came about, but that was my signature tune. You know, that was, no matter where we went, that was the one that brought the house down.
Shoes are longing to stray and step around the heart of it in old New York. I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep.
Most of the time they let me pick out the things that I loved, like Peggy Lee, and I did some of the newer stuff like Billy Joel things. You know, Jack and I would both sing. We were both the only two really that sang, oh, except for Allie. But Jack and I did most of the singing in the group. So, now I was much better than him though. He'll kill me when he sees that. Lots of good times and good music, and I miss it.
I'll make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, you know I'm gonna make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York.
Yes, we had a lot of talented musicians. Leominster was very well known for good, talented musicians. And for example, the Leominster Colonial Band, how many cities have a colonial band that we all grew up with and we all played with. So Leominster, to me, is a very unique, unusual place.
And it was amazing the amount of talent that this area had in those days. I don't know if it exists now, but it was incredible then.
It was great to experience doing stuff like that. Never be able, you don't do it anymore. We don't have any ballrooms anymore. They're all gone, unfortunately. Those were fun days.
Some of the ballrooms are still there, although many are in disrepair. And if you listen hard enough, you may hear the echoes of the once foot-stomping, swinging music of the 30s and the 40s.
The big band days aren't over. Our kids of today enjoy that music. They love to perform that music. And crowds of today certainly are looking to have that to entertain them. I'm fortunate to be the band director at Leominster High School, and being a student there in 1980s, we had a big band under Egidio Bisceglia, and I played lead trumpet in the big band. And ironically enough, we still play some of the charts that we had back in the day. The big band, now that we have at Leominster High School, is a 24-piece big band, traditional band. We play different gigs throughout the city. It's one that enables us to play music from the past that is so tremendous for our students of today. That music is timeless. The quality of those arrangements and the quality of the music themselves lend that music to just be around forever. And our kids have a great time playing the music as well as learning about the composers and the musicians themselves.
My father was one of the singers in the Frankie D Band. I remember his passion and love for music and playing with the band. On Sundays, he'd get out his guitar and we'd gather around the kitchen table. And he'd make us sing, and we had a great time. It was a great memory. But I remember my father when he sang. It seemed like he was singing for 5,000 people, even at the kitchen table. Great memory.